For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rick Brimacombe, and on behalf of the Minneapolis Club, Upsize Minnesota, and my group, Club Entrepreneur, welcome to Managing Rapid Growth. Be careful of what you wish for is a caveat that could apply to many emerging and growing companies in pursuit of their dreams and aspirations. Rapid growth can cause major problems, some of them obvious and some of them more subtle. The workshop today will help us get our arms around the fast growth challenge. And to help business owners better understand the myriad of best practices for the categories we're covering, Upsize Minnesota and Club Entrepreneur have assembled today's event. We're going to introduce a panel of experts who can serve as your trusted advisors as you navigate and go through your own growth journey. Upsize Minnesota is a how-to business magazine focused on helping business owners build bigger and more profitable companies. Club Entrepreneur and my firm, Brimacombe & Associates, inspire business owners like you to achieve more than you thought possible by helping refine strategies, assemble resources, and secure funding. In our efforts to provide actionable content, Upsize Minnesota and Club Entrepreneur offer you today's panel. And as such, I want to introduce you to our event sponsors. Aviante is a SaaS company that John Long is running. And John, I have to give him kudos for stepping in as a pinch hitter today on short notice, so thank you, John. Dynamico is a sales, marketing, consultancy, and agency. Insperity is a human resource consulting and advisory firm, and Tech Guru is a technology service provider. Thank you all very much to our sponsors. And to introduce you to the panelists, let's see, I will start, I guess, here first, closest to me. Kristen Boss is a certified business performance advisor for Insperity. Brendan Dennewill is CEO of Dynamico. And let's see, John Long, as I mentioned, is the co-chair now of Aviante Software. And then Micah Thor is president of Tech Guru. Now that you've been introduced to everybody, let's hear from them as to how they fit into the discussion about managing rapid growth. And the panelists, why don't you all take a minute or two to talk a little bit about your background and share some of that with the audience. And Kristen, why don't we start with you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Kristen Boss with Insperity. So Insperity, we are a human resources or a human or HR solutions company. We're a PEO, if anybody is familiar with that term, which means a professional employer organization. 32 years old, publicly traded. If you care about that, check us out. We're NSP. Our platform, or where we come in and help businesses, is everything from a startup to that emerging growth. And I specialize in that emerging growth, so that rapid growth space for businesses. So as we go through the questions today, I'll be talking about how we're helping businesses that are specifically in that emerging growth space.
Kristen, just to help them, the audience, know what you mean by that, in terms of employee size, what's kind of the range of, from the low end up to the high end of your sweet spot?
Sure. So Insperity works, as I said, from startups, typically about 5 to 10 employees. So little baby companies up to about 150 employees. So emerging growth is usually in that 25 to probably 75 to 100 employees is how we categorize that area.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brendan.
Hi, I'm Brendan Dennewill. I'm co-founder and CEO of Dynamico, as Rick said. So Dynamico is both a consultancy as well as an agency. On the consulting side, we help businesses put together a go-to-market strategy that will set them up for success. We also consult on implementing CRM and marketing automation. And then on the agency side, we actually then implement the services that would then support that strategy on a day-to-day basis to accomplish the lead generation goals and set up the sales team for success. We typically work with businesses 5 to 100 million in size, 10 or more people, and are typically growing by at least 15%, but often are trying to double their sales.
And for your sweet spot, the 5 to 100 million, what's kind of going on at a company at 5 million that they are now into an area that is a best fit with your firm? That somewhere in that range anyway.
So they're doing what are you?
Well, you said that the revenue, the sweet spot was
Yeah.
5 to 100 million. So what's just going on, I'm kind of giving a little bit of a background to the audience here as far as what's happening at a company at 5 million. Why not 500,000? What's different at 5 million
Right.
versus 500,000?
Well, that's the point at where the growth. So if a business is trying to grow by at least 15%, then and to be able to invest in the sales and marketing that's required to get there, that's typically where you need to be. So the investment of a $5 million company in marketing is anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million in marketing and sales. And until they're at that point, it doesn't really make sense to bring us in, because that's what it costs. And that's really why we have that lower limit. And of course, on the upper limit, it really comes on for businesses that have bigger revenues of 20, 30. We have a client that does 90 million in revenue, and they don't have any marketing. We do that all for them. So it really depends on the skills and bandwidth that they need to achieve their goals.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. John?
Yeah, my name is John Long. I'm the CEO, well, former CEO, now co-chair of Aviante. I founded it about 12 years ago. It's a staffing software company. So if you think of like Doherty Staffing here, our software would run their business. We have about 500 customers around the country itself. So think of ATS, front and back office, payroll, and billing itself.
And then in terms of your background, John, maybe just touch on when you started the company and how you started the company and where you're at now and how your roles changed. And
Yep, you bet. So I started the company 12 years ago with $1,900 a month for 6 months for 4 guys. So if you add that up, that's $44,000. We did 23 million last year. So the idea of being able to not have any money and try to grow it, I think, is primarily why I might be of use to some people itself. I've done other startups as well. And so I'm happy to share more of that story.
great, thank you. And then Micah, tell us a little bit about your background.
Thanks, Rick. So I'm Micah Thor from Tech Guru, and Tech Guru is an outsourced IT support provider based in Northeast Minneapolis in the super cool Grain Belt Brewery Complex, which thankfully for us is on a snow emergency route, so everybody was able to get there. We are providing outsourced IT support to businesses that don't have their own internal IT department. And so the simplest description I like to use for what we cover is everything with buttons and lights. So if you are at your desk and something isn't working and it has a button and or a light, you call your IT person or your IT department. Well, for small to mid-sized businesses, a lot of times they don't have an IT department. So that's where we can come in and provide a lot of value. And I think today is a really great example of the importance of solid technology that can cover you no matter what the circumstances are impacting your business right now. So many people are staying home from work, yet technology is enabling their businesses to continue to function. A little more about who we serve. Companies between the employee size of 5 to 200 is pretty typical. We've got about 2,000 endpoints we support now. And we've been in a really solid growth mode for several years now. We made the Inc. 5000 list and the Minnesota Fast 50 this year.
Yeah, so your perspective, interesting one, is both Tech Guru has grown rapidly, so you have that lens to look at, but then the technology solutions you provide are helping other companies grow quick too, so you have a couple of different lenses to share with us today. So thanks for joining us. Okay, coming back to Kristen, talk a little bit about kind of your perspectives and views on this topic about managing rapid growth and the lens that you have from the vertical industry that you're in. So let's start with you, Kristen.
Okay, so there is a case study that is on each of your tables. It's about a client of ours called Stay Mobile. So it's a multi-state company. They started with Insperity when they were just a couple locations, and now they're in 16 different states. And the reason that they came to work with Insperity is that their business was taking off, and they understood that they did not have a really good employment or HR platform in place. They didn't start with the end in mind, like many entrepreneurs and very business owners. They're like, this is a really cool idea. I think I can sell this, and then you just start to go. and you kind of lose sight of the plan. And so they recognize that, especially from an HR perspective, and so engaged with Insperity. Some of the things that were kind of going wrong with them are probably things that many businesses that are in that space are experiencing. So they didn't have good employment practices. Their benefits were out of whack, and they were very costly, and they weren't doing what they needed them to do as far as attracting and retaining employees. Their workers' compensation was expensive. There was no safety training. They didn't have a strong HR strategy. They were just kind of letting the business almost run them instead of them running the business. And so Insperity came in, outsourced all of their HR, gave them a better platform to buy their benefits, and essentially at the end of the day, as you can see from there, they are successful, growing, continue to grow. And just having all of those kind of pieces put in place and using outside resources that are not reading their own headlines or drinking their own Kool-Aid. So you've got somebody else who is looking at it from a professional eye that can bring in, those resources. So there's just an example that you can reference.
Great. Thank you very much. Brendan.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I remember coming to a Club E event, Rick, probably 3 or 4 years ago, where the topic was around silos in business. And it's really interesting that I'm already starting to see that, and we're already on the first or second question, so the challenges that we're seeing from a sales and marketing perspective are very much around sales process, so not having a proper sales process in place, but then also the hiring and onboarding of sales and marketing people, which of course is very much an HR deal. And on the other end, which Micah can probably talk to too, is the technology, which in many cases is this shiny object that you can just plug in and it's gonna solve all our issues. But of course, as you'll probably hear more today, without a solid strategy, processes and systems in place, that's not going to happen. So for us, the challenges that we've typically seen in this drowning versus starving challenge that businesses have, it's very much around not having a proper sales process and not having a proper onboarding process for sales and marketing people.
On the sales process question, do you see that sales process then rippling through in other issues with the financing aspects and budgeting and stuff? Because if you go bottom up and you got to win one account, one customer at a time, and it rolls up into the financials and budgeting and so forth, the sales process, while you might put it over here, really drives the whole machine.
Right, and kind of what I was saying, it affects the business horizontally, so it affects every department. Whereas if you do have a clear and proper strategy and process in place, when you're growing, when you're starting to grow more rapidly, it's easier to onboard more people more quickly, more efficiently, more effectively, so that you can keep up with that growth. Great,
thank you, John.
Yeah, so I think if I phrase the question, what would I tell the then me 10 years ago? It's grown 300%. What would I do differently or continue to do better? And I think what these two just talked about are spot on. I think I'd echo that a lot. For me, I think it's the balance between still the culture and being able to have the team. Because you guys are great, the people that are working in business right out here now. If you're rapidly growing, you're doing something right. I usually swear, so usually I say something, we'll skip that part for now. But you're doing something right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're growing that fast, if you're doing that part, you're doing something right. And so I would encourage you to first is keep that front and center in your mind of what are you doing that actually works. That flows right to keep your customers. You get your customers right, you keep them happy, you're not losing them. That is going to end up a long-term benefit. I think we ended up with, or we're doing 99% client retention, user retention, and I think that was a big key. But then it goes right to the team itself. So on the way over here, I called up my chairman. He's the partner of Sarant Capital. This guy he was all of McKinsey in the entire tech ran McKinsey's tech division for the country. So he's seen thousands and thousands and thousands of business. I said, what's your top 3 for growth? And his response was team, team, team itself, right? And so again, this is a guy, his name's Kevin Frick, is absolutely amazing, one of the smartest guys I've known, and that's his main focus. And I would echo that. So you get your customers right, and then you go and do the team side. And for me, it's I think it's interesting on, you can't get the, we just hired a CEO that's ran a $1 billion part of Thompson. You can't get him when you're $5 million a year, right? So there's an evolution on that, and I think there's some good theories to that. I think I would just follow up too. I also talked to Doug Berg, if you know him. He's the guy, he's a tech guy here that's done like jobs to web and a whole bunch of other things itself. And he really focused on just getting conciseness of what your mission is. I think that was talked a little bit here already. But the second part is the KPIs, being able to measure where you're at. Because one of the things I did wrong was I focused too much on the speed of what was today, as opposed to taking just not 15 years down the road. I mean, who gives a crap about that? I'm just talking, head up just a little bit more, and that's where that execution, that strategy, and having that strategy in place, but having KPIs that do that monitoring for you. If you can't answer the question of what are the top 5 KPIs that you look at right now that actually do something with them, you lost. And his third thing was team. Yep.
So I'll take the 2 different approaches on this one. One, how we've helped our clients in growth mode, and one, how we've made some changes internally with our own growth. The really neat thing that we've seen in the last decade is this cool advent of cloud technology and subscription model computing. Previous to that, you'd be looking at a major investment for your growing firm. You'd have to buy a server that's going to carry you for the next 5 years, and it's going to cost a 6-figure sort of outlay. And you really hope that you realize that return on investment, right? Well, now it's great. You've got 3 people. You've got 3 $5 a month subscriptions from Office 365 to get you started. And as you scale up, you can add on more layers, more features, and only use what you need when you need it. So we've, from the get-go, since we're real early adopters of technology and love the idea of owning almost nothing and just being completely cloud-based, we've helped some of our really rapid growth companies scale from that 10-person environment with minimal cash outlay all the way up to being 100 people without running in any constraints as far as productivity goes in that software stack. So that's been really amazing for growth mode companies in the last few years. For us, one thing that was difficult the first few years that we had rapid growth was maintaining some sort of culture. Because things were rapidly changing. We were really stressed out at first, and my business partner and I sat down and were like, why are we doing this to ourselves? And why do we exist? And then we stumbled across Simon Sinek's Start With Why and did a deep dive into that and came up with our new sort of tagline, which is the Caring Technology Company. And we looked at ways that we could create a culture of caring alongside of this growth. So not sacrificing the culture of caring within the company, that no matter what happens, our primary concern is the team, and we're going to take care of the employees, and we're also going to take care of our clients. And what was amazing, we thought we were growing rapidly before that. When we got everybody on board with that and we started hiring and firing based on that core value of caring, some really magic stuff started to happen, and our clients picked up on it, and they started talking about it, and pretty soon we're on the Fast 50. And it seems like it was in retrospect, it seems like it was such a small shift for us to make, but just being really deliberate about it and sticking to that has made a world of difference for us.
Did the Start With Why come after the EOS adoption, or did the EOS adoption come after the Start With Why?
They were pretty close to each other. I want to say EOS was first because that gave us some structure to actually sit down and talk about the company as opposed to just run around like chickens with their heads cut off. So, yeah.
All right, great. Okay, so how I run these events is to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions if they want. I'm going to go through and ask each of the panelists one specific question tailored to them, At that point, if somebody would like to chime in and ask a question, please do. I have a list of other questions that I will ask the panelists in general, but once I get through and give everybody kind of one question that I want to hear their perspective on, then we'll open it up to the floor. And so start thinking about those really good questions that you want to ask these bright and energetic folks helping us here today. So, all right, so I guess come back down here, sure. Kristen, you're going first again. From a practical standpoint, what do you see as frequent missteps of your clients who are experiencing fast growth? And it was kind of interesting when I was talking to John Long before the event happened, and John and I were kicking around different ideas, and he said, well, what do you think? And one of the things I said was, from an HR perspective, it kind of gets shortchanged a little bit because it's not up at the revenue level. It's kind of down here on the support side. So tell us about some of the typical missteps that you've seen.
Sure. Well, just hearing what both Micah and John had to say about culture. So if you take that down to the practical level, it's just like, why is your culture going sideways? This business is doing great. We're growing like crazy, but gosh, we're working really, really hard. So a couple things. These are almost kind of like bullet points, but these are like common. Like you can pick any one of the emerging growth clients that we're working with, and probably 75 to 80% of them are struggling with these. So first one is hiring randomly. So they're hiring someone that looks like them. They talk like you, they're your friend, they're your buddy, they agree with you, so you're hiring somebody just like you, which is not good if you want to have somebody who maybe has a different idea or an opposing opinion that can offer as other ideas on maybe where to take your business, where to go next, those types of things. Also, and this happens a lot of times in family businesses, you're hiring somebody that you really like. You're hiring your brother-in-law, you're hiring your mom, you're hiring your dad, or you're hiring your best friend that you went to high school with, but they don't have the skills to do the job. So we see those types of mistakes all the time. I think it's also really important to know who your customers are. Like, okay, you know what, we ship shirts and it's, Brendan wears my t-shirt or whatever the case may be. But know who they are, why they buy from you, why they stay, and why they go. So that will give you direction on what your business should look like as you continue to grow. Also, John, I think you mentioned, have a methodology to track your leading indicators. So have that in place. I think that that's really important. And always have your business, designed with kind of the end in mind. I know that's kind of a cliche that's bandied about a lot, but it's just like you should know, if something happens to the leadership, what happens? Do we have a succession plan? What is the plan? Is this a VC? Do they want to, that is invested, that they need an exit strategy in 3 years, 5 years, or whatever, but have all of that in mind. And then make sure your leadership is also on the same page. Now that everybody understands maybe what your goal is, but they understand how you get to the goal. I think that there's been many leadership meetings where everybody's sitting around the table and agreeing, then they walk out of there and everybody's got their own individual agenda. And so you need to make sure that everybody understands the goal, but also how you're getting there. And that's where Micah was talking about EOS is a great resource to be able to do that.
Great, thank you. Brendan, obviously the internet has changed all facets of business. And it seems the hyper growth in business is such that things are changing even more rapidly today than they were in the past. So if you look back as far as selling goes, if you go back 20 years or 10 years, how have things changed over time given the advent of the internet and the adoption of what that brings to companies?
Yeah, actually, before I answer that, I think this EOS thing might come up quite a few times. Who in the room is either familiar with or already using EOS in their businesses, or a similar business methodology? Okay, that's always yeah. Okay, so to answer your question, Rick, so what we see is the biggest changes that have happened in what we call a go-to-market strategy, which of course is just another way to say marketing and sales. That's different today between 20 years ago is that 20 years ago, for example, the salesperson was in complete control of the sales process. Today, not so much. So, 20 years ago, and Jim, you can probably talk about, you can probably talk to that too.
I can probably say 40 years.
You knew you had a problem, you needed help with something, and you try to find a salesperson who you thought could sell you a solution to that problem, and they took you through pretty much 90% of the sales process. Today, salespeople, when they eventually connect with a prospective customer, that customer is already 70 to 80 to maybe 90% of the way through making their decision before they've even spoken to the salesperson. And I think that is the biggest fundamental difference. And I think what hasn't been done to the same extent as that change is how businesses are approaching their sales. So even though the way we sell needs to change, we haven't quite changed. At the end of the day, if you think there's one parallel and one thing does never change, every one of us in this room is a consumer. We've all bought something in the last day, week, month of a sizable value, and it always starts with the same thing. I have this concern, I have this issue that I need solved, and I start my buying process. And the biggest difference, of course, today, as you alluded to, Rick, is that typically starts on the internet with Google. So you ask that first question to Google, and then Google decides, what answer they're going to serve up to you that they think is the most relevant, and then off you go. And if your business is not the one who Google's is not the one that has the page on your website or some other online asset that Google is serving up to answer that question, your salesperson is not going to have that conversation. So that is, to me, is the fundamental change over between 20 years, 10 years, and today.
Okay, great, thank you. John, I've had an opportunity to interact with you on a couple of different projects, and that's been fun. I've also had an opportunity to observe what's going on at Aviante and how the employees are engaged, how they're enthusiastic, and the culture that you've been able to create over the years there. So my question to you around culture is, how have you evolved as a leader, and how have you evolved the culture as the company has grown? So you have kind of a startup phase, it's small, then you kind of have a growth phase, things start to kick off, and then now kind of more of a scale stage. And so how has culture changed? How have you, as a leader, helped facilitate that?
Yeah, it's great, and none of it was purposeful. It was accidental for most of it. But I see. So culture is a huge deal. I think I'm more proud of, we did the Inc. 5000 6 times in a row running, but I think I'm more proud of the 4 years of best places to work. And so I think I would encourage you guys this way is just focus on that, your staff, your people and whatnot. Not to quote my good friend, not really, Macklemore, but the good old days kind of thing. This is such a fun time. When you're in that growth stage, that is such a fun time, and I just encourage the heck out of you to enjoy it. And so part of what we did on the culture side is just embrace the speed. It's fast, right? I mean, it's fast. If your team wants something that, they come in, and if they get there at 8:30 or 9 or 10 o'clock or whatever, and they go home at 4 and, hey, we got an inch of snow and we want to go home, it's probably not the right deal. When you're trying to manage that growth, embrace the speed. And to me, the second part is we focused a lot on the fail fast mentality. Who cares if somebody made it, said left and we should have gone right or whatever. It's just fail fast, move on it, embrace the speed. And a lot of that is where you build trust with each other. Think of, in your business right now, who you trust the most in your business. And feel about how, if that person made a little mistake, how would you react to it? And then picture somebody that you don't have that relationship on your staff with. And if they made a little mistake, and how would you react to it? If those two are different, I think that really starts to blend in on what I'm talking about, on get your team excited, motivated. I like to think, and I write up on the board, positive comma solutions, because it's not like positive solutions, one word. I had to put the comma in there. I know it sounds stupid, but positive, you can choose whether you look at this opportunity in a positive or negative light, right? This is your choice in life itself. Secondly, is there's always going to be issues. Always, always, always. So that's where you get into solutions mode. And if you get your team to think in those solutions mode, not just saying, hey, this part is issue, but they come to you and they're saying, hey, this is what I want to try, and you're in that, great, let's go. And if it doesn't work, support them. And I think those are the keys to that culture side of it, that we just had engaged, enthused people.
Well, you definitely have engaged, enthused people. So you've done a great job with that. It's been fun for me to see that. And so thanks for sharing that with everybody. Mike, as I mentioned earlier to you, you have two lenses. You have, hey, we provide technology solutions to help people grow, but then you also have gone through growth at Tech Guru. So how have you yourself utilized technology, and how have you utilized technology at Tech Guru to help you grow?
Sure. So I had this great moment as we were in our early stages of growth. I stopped in McDonald's for some fries. That was it. Just gonna limit it to fries, right? And I wasn't not like a regular McDonald's customer by any means, but I was just kind of watching McDonald's do their thing, and that, like, their food aside, they have a really amazing system in place. Somebody hits a button on a really simple screen at the front, and they collect your payment. And through technology, in the back of that restaurant, a bag of fries or whatever makes its way up to you, completely seamless. But in the background, that's linking up with, inventory and reordering and different metrics and things like that. But it was so simple and so consistent that somebody who'd probably been on the job for maybe a week or two could engage in whatever their role was within that organization. So whether you're actually putting the burgers together or you're just hitting buttons on a screen, it was simplified enough that it could produce consistent results. I.e., I got my French fries, they were warm, they had the perfect amount of salt. I watched as they hit a button on the salt dispenser. It was completely controlled down to the little grain of salt. And I was truly inspired. I was like, I want that same thing for Tech Guru, because I want everybody's fries, quote unquote, that come from Tech Guru to be perfect. So I went back to the team and thought this was totally obnoxious, of course. And I said, I want to create the Tech Guru value menu, which is what are the 5 or 10 things that we do over and over and can get down to a system so that somebody who just started working here a week ago can hit a button and the rest of us do our part to make sure that comes out perfect every time. And then we folded that into the technology platform that we already had in place. And a show of hands in the room, is there anybody here who does not have a piece of software that your company runs on? Right. So everybody has this. What's cool about this is everybody has this capability, and very few companies, especially small businesses, are fully utilizing the software that runs their company. So because we're in technology, we have an interest in this and an aptitude for it, we dug really, really deep into the inner workings of our system, and we created our own button and system behind that. And then what it also produced is a dashboard for me and the other leaders in the company to look at and see, when does a fry fall out of the sack, right? Or when does it get delivered cold, whatever analogy you want to use. We can find that breakdown in the process really, really quickly and adjust for it. And that has been tremendous for us understanding what our capacity is. And I guess to my point about growth, that's one of the things that I always hear our clients struggle with when they're in rapid growth mode, is how do they manage their capacity? Make sure they don't have too much staff or too little staff. Make sure they're ready when they close that big deal. We're going to need X amount of people to come on board. Having a system in place that gives us a really, really, deep, real-time analysis of how our time is being spent makes us a lot more intelligent when we make those decisions. And to us, as a 10-person company a couple of years ago, hiring one person is a really big deal. We don't want to screw that up because they're hard to get rid of, especially if you like them. So we work really hard to get the fries right.
So on that analogy, being a father of 4, I remember the toys and Happy Meals. So is there a toy component with this concept with your customers, or any kind of reward or engagement activity with the customers around kind of a toy-ish thing?
God, I love that. I haven't thought of that angle. I think the reward for us is growth, client satisfaction. We survey after every single interaction with our clients, and when we get amazing feedback, we post that on our messaging boards and share the wins. So I guess the gift is the happy client.
Right, which then share with the employees and then your own team, everybody's happy and engaged, and it all feeds together. All right, great. Okay, so again, I have other questions. I'm going to keep going, but with that said, here's the logical spot to open it up to weave your conversation into the one that I'm directing. So if anybody would like to chime in, we got one right up here.
Question for John. How do you keep your people engaged through and excited through a business that rapidly grows? How do you make them realize that they are in the good old days that you mentioned? How do you help them keep their head above water through the entire craziness that's happening in a business?
So let me, if I may, repeat that so everybody hears that. The question was directed towards John, but the panel can all chime in after John gives his comments. But how do you keep your employees, people engaged with the kind of craziness of the fast growth and stuff like that? So what are some tricks or tidbits of information to share with folks about keeping your employees engaged?
I think it's right. And it's certainly not a science. There's I would love to say I was very prescriptive throughout it and made a lot of mistakes and whatnot. But I think what we did have is, the first part is passion about what we are at. There's Aviante is literally a Cheers. Aviante, if you go to any Aviante person now and say, what's our shot drink of choice? They would all say Fireball. But it's these
That's
little,
true, by the way.
That is absolutely true,
I know.
Side of it. If you have actually seen that. But I think the parts that when you're starting out small and you only have 4 or 5 people, whatnot, then you can relate to a person individually and you can have a small part. But I think one of the tricks is to understand that the business is bigger than you are. And too many entrepreneurs, I myself included, started thinking I was bigger than the business itself. And then I got that flipped around, and just understand that the business is bigger than you are. If you get that part right, then you start to focus on the nourishment of the business itself and understand the team is part of that company itself, right? And so then you get out of your own head and get more into how can I support everybody else. So then you start leading and saying, okay, we got the positive solutions. How do we actually, what is our brand? So we mentioned EOS. This is the core values. He has this, the Happy Meal, the things that bring those things together that people are then proud, and this is where it's at. We had a lot of happy hours, not to say we're just a drinking organization, but the Beer Fridays, it sounds stupid, is fantastic, but it's a way for everybody to socialize. But we would do happy hours regularly, softball games, kickball, do this stuff, and we always invited spouses. And you bring the spouses, significant others, whatever. What that does is that gets the whole thing as a family together, so then the other spouse understands the speed, and they get to be a part of the whole part, together, right? So the spouse is a huge thing. Then we have epic parties, like not the little kind of, but epic year-end parties, because again, this allows the socialized part of it. So people to see, when we look and it's Pete, it's not CTO, right? And so you start seeing people as people. That's when it, I think, keep resonating for it. We are very transparent with our numbers. And so the KPIs, the whole journey itself, I feel like too many entrepreneurs, one Rick and I work with that I think gets this wrong. Getting the transparency and here's where the numbers are, this is what we're trying to grow to, this is where it all is on the journey, I think is really important, because then they actually go from I'm just an employee to I'm part of the journey itself. Having them included up on the table from a management decisions and being able to be opined is important. And then it gets to what I talked about earlier, just the allowing people to make decisions, take actions on behalf of what they think is the right part and being ultra supportive of it. Because then that, I was told when we were 5 people and there's no way we can maintain this speed and this culture, and, we're 150 people now, and, is there a theoretical end? Probable, but at least for now it's not. Panelists, anything?
Any bells?
So one of the things when we're engaging with an emerging growth company and talking with them about their culture is we ask them about their employees. And if you look at your culture, we'll just ask them point blank. So when your employees are coming to work every day, like what gets in their way, stops them from doing their job well? And the flip side of that, what helps them do their job well? Like what is it about when they walk through the door in the morning and sit at their chair that gets in the way or helps them? And so it's really important to understand that, not if there is a problem, not to like to address it, get on it. Don't just push it aside and hope that it goes away. Processes are often one of the things that we hear that get in the way and will lead to a negative culture if they're not addressed. So, for example, if there's something in your process that requires rework, something that in your process that leads to errors, unhappy customers, those types of things, and if your employees don't have the ability, aren't empowered to get that done, to fix it, or bring it up to their leadership to figure out a better way to do it, that can quickly spiral into losing customers, but also impacting the culture of your company. So those are
Great,
just
thank
some
you.
of the common things we see.
Brendan, Micah?
One thing that we've tried really hard to build within our organization is trust. And every quarter and every annual meeting that we have, we do little trust builders, which kind of sounds a little bit cheesy when I say it that way, but having a high level of trust with our employees gives them the confidence to tell us that they're unhappy about something without worrying about losing their job. And if we don't know that somebody's unhappy, we can't make any changes. So a couple of examples in recent history, we had someone who just really, really was frustrated that we bring on an account and there might be a couple of pieces of documentation missing about a printer or something like that. And it would take him longer to track down the information to be able to get his job done. And I didn't realize it, but he was so frustrated with it, he was starting to consider whether or not he should continue working with us. And because he had such a high level of trust in me, he pulled me aside and said, look, this is something it's really bothering me, and I really want to fix this. And it became a really emotional conversation because I was like, wow, thank you so much for feeling like you could talk to me about this. This is going to make a huge impact on our ability to scale. And in fact, it identified him as somebody who is thinking like an owner, because he brought that up to me and he phrased it and said, this is going to hurt us when we try to scale. I was like, wow, that's so cool that you're thinking that way and you feel comfortable criticizing me directly, really, because I'm the one who built that documentation system. So now he took over all of our documentation because it's something that he excels at and is really passionate about. And so it's really created a solution for him. He came back the following week in our meeting and professed his love for the company. It was that big of a turnaround for his business positive in our EOS level 10. He said, I don't want to sound too gushy, but guys, I really love this company. It really made my year, I think, to have that level of turnaround with a situation.
Cool, very cool. Brendan?
Yeah, and just to sort of to add to that, as we continue to grow, and again in line with EOS, which is why I asked the question earlier. So for us, we know, so leading a team of 10 as we grow, what is absolutely critical is having that vision to be able to share with the team firstly, and then of course all stakeholders, including clients. And which of course then takes clear, transparent communication at all times, and nurturing that culture and nurturing the people on the team. Those are all some of my rocks for the year as we continue to grow.
Okay. And then you also do some social stuff, because I was at your office in the last year at a social event, so you're also doing social kinds of activities like John had mentioned too, correct?
Right. Yeah. So in fact, one of our rocks for the year also is to have at least one event every month to continue not only to connect with all our stakeholders, but starting with our team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Question over here.
I mean, to follow on the comment about trust, so there's trust is vertical and horizontal. And in terms of horizontal among employees and how they come to trust each other, if all four or Mike at the end can comment on the role that you see horizontal trust playing in your organization and what you've done to build that.
That's a great question.
Actually, let me repeat it for those folks over there if you didn't hear it. The question was about trust, and trust can be both vertical as well as horizontal. And what do you do to create trust within the organization and build trust kind of one-to-one, as well as a culture at the company? So Mike is going to jump on it first, and then we'll let everybody else comment.
The timing on this question is great because we just did a trust building exercise 2 days ago. So we do them through EOS, and the EOS actually agenda includes some team building stuff, which is really focused around trust. If you've not read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, that's a great book to get inside of your organization. And for if you have any employees that don't like to read, there's also a comic book version, and it's in a parable version. It's a really fast read, and it sets the stage for this conversation that you'll have with the team, and that teams that don't have a high level of trust throughout the whole organization, horizontal or vertical, are holding back information that is really, really important, like the example that I gave, right? So every quarter we do something, and the one that we just did at our annual was you go around and everybody gives somebody a compliment and then gives them something, your greatest contribution to the organization is this. And then one thing you need to start or stop doing is this. And that creates vulnerability through the whole group, but also trust, and that nobody gets fired at the end of this exercise, and they start to realize the importance of when you're being that candid with someone about something, you can bring to the surface genuine progress on problems that you're trying to solve, either individually or as an organization. So that's how we keep doing this. Is to answer that part of the question, I guess, is we're going to bring somebody new on next week. They won't know about this for a couple of months. So we kind of have to manage that situation, that we can't have just total candor with them just yet. But we try and bring them up to speed as quickly as possible with some of the books that I mentioned. And then also during the quarterly meeting that they'll go to, they'll get a trust building exercise. So the onboarding process to trust is somewhere between 30 and 90 days.
Great, thank you. Trust issue, anybody else want to chime in on that one?
For me on the trust side, absolutely is key to it. And to me, that's the fail fast, where it's okay if people make mistakes, so you get that part of it. But then it's like, do you trust that the other person's doing the job or not, right? And that's where KPIs can certainly happen. I feel like it is one of the positions as a leader that is I want the team to keep running, and when they start to not be able to run because of a team member or not being able to pull their weight, that is then where where I need to come in. And then, of course, that's oftentimes not, that's the poopy part of the job, right? But yeah, I just, building the trust side of it, I think seeing the people as a person, the exercises that Mike was talking about are great, but it's a must-have.
Either of you two want to add anything?
Well, one of the things that we recommend, as Micah had talked about a little bit, is just to really have a defined onboarding process, that it isn't just here's your chair, here's your computer, here's your job description, good luck. Everybody kind of chuckles and laughs about that, but it happens all the time, sadly. And so make sure that you've got a defined onboarding process, that people are interacting and understand who their customers are internally, not just who their boss is or their boss's boss. And culture surveys, I think, are a really good tool that companies can use as you're going through that growth period. And your culture might be fabulous when you're 25 employees, but all of a sudden you're 50 employees and you're 75 employees, and guess what? Your culture is not the same. And so culture surveys can be a really important tool in understanding if that trust is still there, maybe exposing some opportunities for change. But with a culture survey like that, you do need to act on it, and you do need to be transparent with the people that actually participated. You can't just take that and hand it out to the leadership and say, well, we're just going to pretend we didn't see this. So you need to be able to look yourself in the mirror with the results and share those and act on those.
Great. Brendan, any last
I think that's pretty well covered.
Okay, all right.
Well, if I may, in the spirit of learning, several years ago, a company that I acquired had probably the best practice I've seen for both organizational learning and building trust. And they would have a weekly Blaring Wonder Award. would gather together and they would compete for who had the biggest screw up that week. And it was a badge of honor to have that trophy on your desk. And I mean, in terms of engendering trust, having fun, organizational learning, and kind of getting people to bring forth the mistakes that may try to bury otherwise and fix it for themselves for fear they're going to get found out or whatever the case may be. So just, I mean, a really interesting way to operationalize trust and learning so the whole organization can live. Great.
Anybody have a blaring blunder award banana? No? All right, but that's a good
It's
idea.
going on our
though.
issues list. We'll see what they think of it.
There's a national organization that do, I won't say the word, they do F-up nights where people, like I've done at Club E, Pecha Kucha things where they do 20 slides, 20 seconds a slide, tell a little bit of a story or whatever, but there's a similar kind of concept for F-up nights where people talk about the mistakes they've made and so forth. So, yep, good comment. Other questions? Over here. Yes, Chris.
A question for Mike. If I recall correctly, you do IT, and you guys have made a move into the CPA space.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So, we have a sporting goods company, so we can sell anything. There's a million customers out there, and being a small company, you can only go down some rabbit hole before you run out of money. Being an IT company, there's a million companies you can help, but you guys have gotten into CPAs, which is super specific. How did you choose CPAs instead of healthcare, grocery, something else? And why CPAs, and how do you make that decision?
Well, we try to
Okay,
fill.
Hold on, let me just make sure that we heard it over here. The question was, at Tech Guru, they focused on CPA, the accounting firm, as a practice vertical for them. While they do serve other customers, that's a focus area. So the question directly to Micah was about the CPA firm. How'd you pick that? I think we could extend that after Micah answers that to everybody about industry focus, vertical focus, and any stories that they might have on that one. Okay, Micah?
I would certainly love to hear the stories because this is a relatively new venture for us. But to answer your question about how do we get there, we're trying to reinvent ourselves. We're growing, we're strong, everything's great. We could put our feet up and enjoy it for a little while, but I guess that's not in our nature. So we get uncomfortable when things are good. So we looked at a few different industries. We hired a consultant to help us kind of create a short list. And we actually started with dentists and spent a lot of money building marketing for dentists, joined a couple of organizations, went to some conferences, and then actually got to pitch a few. And it turned out that they looked at IT like they look at plumbing or electricity, and that you don't even think about it until it's broken, and you don't do anything proactive to manage your plumbing. But when it breaks, you just call the plumber and it's fixed, right? They could still drill, fill, and bill when their computers didn't work. So we weren't able to position ourselves as a value added service provider for them because they wouldn't value the proactive nature of our relationship. So we went back to the drawing board, looked at our short list, and we're like, okay, on this short list, who is absolutely crippled without IT and is going to pay a premium for it and is going to want a provider who's really focused on their industry and learning about what changes are coming and being software experts and subject matter experts. And CPAs were there. They're perfect. And we had a few clients that we could attest to between January 1st and April 15th. Nothing can go wrong, right? And so they're ready to invest in technology, and that was a great fit for us. In between those two, we actually also looked at the cannabis industry because that was really making headlines and on the medical side as well as the recreational side. It seemed like this great opportunity of a brand new cash crop that had billions and billions of dollars of market cap. Well, digging into that one, we ran into the same thing as the dentists, and that, I mean, ultimately they weren't going to value our service to the extent where they would select us over a generalist. Because that's ultimately what we're competing against with CPAs is they should hire us because we really know their stack. We're going to their conferences. We're thought leaders. We're speaking at their conferences. We're speaking, at different events that they're attending. We're writing in their publications, so on and so forth. We're a natural choice for them because we know their stuff, right? So I guess ultimately we see this as a shift in our industry, that people are going to start to vertical focus a little bit more for not just marketing reasons, but also for operational efficiency. If you're supporting a smaller stack of stuff, you can do it at a higher profit margin.
So the focus question, any of the three of you, I know, John, you have a very narrowly defined industry-specific product.
Yep, literally just do the staffing industry, even though it's applicable to other things, focusing on the staffing industry itself. Again, as I started, Doug Berg, you know, his number one thing for him was just know where you're going on the specific side of it. So bringing it in, I think is right. By the way, I didn't finish the Macklemore thing. It's the good old days, if again, that's you remember that part. So hey, at the end of the day, I spent, 4 minutes with both of you guys earlier today. And so my biggest nose, you know, I talk about my nose where it trips off on is, so in your business, the part that I took is you came through with 5 different places from, I won't quote them exactly, but you've got Care 11, the city in Calhoun, you've got Box, you've had Ice Rink, you had another part, you had, you know, just, see, I did listen a little bit, I'm just kidding. But you had different parts of it. And what I saw in you guys is you just had that, you're staring down the abyss of the ability to be able to get as many orders as your 2 selves helped. My biggest question for you then was, when you try to do purposefully go into sales, how are you going to segment it? And I don't believe that's where you have a good answer at this point. And so what I would strongly encourage you to do is pick a spot, take the other orders as they came in through your website, that's great, but be purposeful on a specific thing, build a sales organization, use this guy, get a sales organization that has, you know, that's focused on whatever is that industry that you pick, and run it to the ground. Then expand off. So we are now 12 years into this business itself, 23 million, and we're just starting to look at going, okay, what other verticals should we hit?
Brendan, talk a little bit about how your firm might help somebody go through that process, or the process for yourself at your firm in narrowing down what you target.
Yeah, well, I'll speak about it at a higher level, which is, and again, this actually fits really well with the question that you asked me earlier, Rick, about the changes between today and 10 or 20 years ago. And one of the fundamental changes also is the amount of noise. So the internet is an amazing and a powerful thing, and all the technology that comes with it. On the downside, of course, there are things to consider too, and one of them is the whole adage of being all things to all people has never been truer than it is today. You have to, from a go-to-market perspective, so your sales and marketing messaging, the more focused it is, the more you will connect with your audience. So it's no surprise to me whatsoever that Tech Guru just went through this exercise and decided to do that. We see it all the time, and in fact, we advise clients who've been in business for 20, 30 years that are running into issues with not connecting with their audience, and therefore not converting and doing the amount of the sales that they should be doing. And as soon as they take a vertical focus, that changes, and it makes sense, and it will change. If you're able to speak the language of that particular industry, because we fall into the same trap that every industry falls in marketing, which is all the jargon that goes with our industry. Every industry has its own jargon, and if you don't speak that jargon, whether it's at a trade show or in your online communications, whether it's your blog posts, your videos, your social media, if you don't use that jargon that particular vertical industry understands, or where they realize that you understand them, that is very powerful, and you cannot do that if you're trying to provide a service to everybody.
Kristen, while your firm may not get into the weeds as far as a company picking a vertical to focus on, you can help a company focus on what kind of employee to hire and that hiring process. So supporting an industry focus, how might you go about helping an organization focus on kind of the hiring and HR side of things?
Yeah, so to Rick's point, we don't have a vertical focus, although we certainly know what our top 25 SIC codes are, right? It's more of a mindset, but also understanding, what's going on in the marketplace, and I'll give you an example of that. So clients or businesses that are our clients are those that have a growth agenda and a getting better agenda, and understand that they need to invest in their employees to move their business forward. And that sounds like a simplification, but it's just like those three things need to be in place, and the leadership needs to like own that, embrace that. So one of the verticals that we have been having a lot of success in is manufacturing. So everybody knows that manufacturing is having a lot of trouble attracting employees. There's just not folks that have gone to that type of study. People don't want to work in a manufacturing job anymore. They want to go to college. And so even though those have morphed into highly skilled, pretty educated, highly comped positions, it's hard to find those folks. So we're finding that that has been a really good market for us to come in and work with a lot of those manufacturers that are trying to figure out, how do I attract those best people in the marketplace? How do I keep them once they're working for me? How do I keep them engaged while they're working for me? And how do I work on my culture? Because they can go down the street to the next manufacturer with their CNC skill or whatever it is that they have, and get paid, $1 more an hour, or have a better benefit package, or whatever the case may be. So you want those employees to say, wow, I love this company. And a lot of those old school manufacturing companies just have never had to do that, so they haven't had to embrace that. And so in today's market, they've realized that they need to change, and so they're looking at us to help them put that platform into place.
Great, thank you.
Rick, can I just add one
Absolutely.
one quick thing there? So for our own business, in fact, for the same reason, our focus is on technology companies, and manufacturing companies was actually on the list as well. And I would love to work with more manufacturing companies, but the amount of education that is needed for a manufacturing company to see the benefits of what we do is just too much hard work. Whereas in technology and software, those businesses just get what we do, and therefore it's a far easier communication and messaging for us to go with.
Great, makes sense. Thank you. All right, so sometimes we've had a lot of great ideas here on the panel on things to do, strategies, initiatives, et cetera. Sometimes spending money isn't necessarily correlated with getting value. So if you think of maybe some kind of inexpensive growth hacks, little kind of easy fixes, something that might be a tidbit you'd leave with the audience that they can go back this afternoon and like launch into something new. What might some of those, as I would call it, growth hacks be in your respective areas of expertise?
I've got one, if you're not calling names. Food. So my business partner went to college with a guy who ended up working for Google and got invited out to take a tour. And he came back and he's like, we're having food in the office. I've been to Google. It's amazing. Let's do it. And I just thought of like all these logistical problems about it, but it turned out to be really, really simple. Colburn's delivers. We build a grocery list, and we just basically reorder once a week and fully stock a refrigerator with lunch meat and pizzas and hopefully some healthy snacks. But the team largely determines what kind of food we're getting. And what that has done, it's cost us, a few $100s a week, but nobody leaves for lunch, ever. And so it's done two things. It's boosted productivity because a lot of times they'll eat at their desk, but it's also created this really great culture within the office, and that people are spending more time with each other on breaks, making lunch, sharing a meal. Somebody will put a pizza on, and everybody will come and grab a slice, and it's turned into this really cool cultural thing, but also given us a major productivity boost.
Great. There's somebody I sent Micah's way, I don't know, about a year and a half ago, and I know he's super happy, and he has mentioned the food, so I do know that it resonates with the team. Anybody else, again, I was thinking of kind of simple little fixes, easy things that they might do when they get back to the office?
So we also do the food, by the way, and I highly recommend it. Spot on. It's for all the reasons that are saying in the breakfast side, in case somebody's coming in late, so they don't need to stop and do it. So that's almost a must-have. Another one that we had a lot of good too is we actually set aside a very moderate piece of money for the employees to pick whether they wanted more of a different laptop or a different screen or keyboard or whatnot. So it's like $75 per person. So then they could pick whatever's the thing they wanted in their space to help. And we actually got pretty good buzz on that one where people could individualize things.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gone to the food but snacks are critical. So we have fully stocked snacks every week, which is very important. But I'll definitely look at the food thing too. My growth hack would be a little different because it is really so simple, but so effective and so powerful, and that is answering. So if you get a question if you're in marketing or sales, and you get a question from a prospective customer in a meeting today, go home or go back to the office and record yourself or write down the answer to the question and put it up on your website.
All right, great. Kristen, anything you want to add?
I suggest putting in place a mentoring program, like an internal one. It's requires a little bit of time, but doesn't cost you really any money, and you can do it a number of different ways. You can use people that have that leadership title. You can just have people that have maybe been at your business longer that can maybe mentor somebody who's newer. It might be somebody mentoring in cross departments, just so that they can learn about a different area of their business. Like, there's all different ways that you can do that, and it's people have made new friendships. They care more about their business, and it's one of those things that helps them when they come across the door every day.
Great, thank you.
Can I throw out another topic that
Absolutely.
we hadn't talked? I know we're almost out of time here, but one of the biggest things I learned and rapidly growth is the pressure on cash flow. So anybody would say that, hey, if you're growing 100% a year, double your business every year, then you would think that you would have better cash flow than if you were sucking it up and growing at 5%, right? I mean, I was completely naive to that side of it. A couple tips on this part. So one, just recognize it. And so every single penny that goes out, everything that you're trying to do, just to make sure that you understand where it's at. If you are understanding the profitability of the different business lines, understand what is actually happening in front of you is important. You don't have to have the CFO level to get to that, to be understanding. You can just get some advisory help on the reports side of it. So really getting more onto the cash side. But then it really came down to, actually, and we have Highland Bank here, but it is something that other people's money in a way that was a key to our growth, was being able to get that business line. Because what happened for us on the credit line, so again, we started with 40 grand, so i.e. not a lot of money, right? And so when you start going in, you start getting growth, you want to run to the red line. So don't, in my opinion, you shouldn't have an EBITDA of 20% when you're in high growth. If you're in high growth, pick a percentage that you want on your EBITDA side and invest the rest of it until you get to that point. And it can be different for every business. To me, I just wanted to make money, so I was at 2-3%. Everything else I funneled back into business. But if you redline it at that point, you don't want to make stupid long-term decisions based on short-term cash flows, right? Stupid long-term decision based on short-term cash flow. That's where this credit line from a Highland or some of the other great banks out there really is just hugely impactful, because now you can keep your eyes up a little bit more, use that credit line, pay it off right away because you want to operate your business in the positive side, but then you can redline it.
Anybody else on cash flow?
So nice to have a line. I totally agree. They need, and just how you phrase that too, able to look up. Because I think when you're managing cash flow and you're stressed out about cash, you really aren't doing the business any favors with growth.
Yep.
You're just trying to.
And Micah, you're the integrator role at your company, right?
So I'm responsible for everything that Dan buys.
All right, so a couple of more minutes. So kind of quick answer from the panel, but 2 parts to the question. If you were to leave the audience with a few takeaways, if you said, hey, on the kind of negative side, watch out for this, Or on the positive side, hey, you really do this. If you were kind of framing things up as a summary for the audience, how would you do that? No particular order. Whoever would like to dive in, we'll just give everybody one last answer here.
I'll throw it out there. So cash flow, I just talked about that one. But I'd say on the positive or on the negative side, don't be myopic. Don't get focused on one thing. All of you have a strength. When you're running your business, all of you have a strength. Maybe sales, might be operations, might be whatever it is. The faster it goes, the more pressure that comes to you, the more likely you're going to get myopic on a certain area. The faster that happens, the rest of it goes south. Right? And so focusing, being able to just understand that, be passionate, but that's where KPIs help you to keep an eye on the rest of the business itself. On the positive side is, I talked about the embracing the speed, but it is that positive comma solutions. And you can't do this alone. If you're in this growth mode, you're doing something right. If you look up, head up a little bit, the business is bigger than you are. It is not going to be just you that can get you to, 150 million, whatever it is, right? And so getting your head down, taking those people and empowering your people is absolutely imperative.
Great, thank you.
I would say don't be afraid to invest in your HR. It's like, obviously, I'm an HR company, so it's a little self-serving. But it is one of those things when it's going well, it's going well, but it can go sideways. It's like, read any of the headlines of several major Fortune 500 companies over the last few months that you think, wow, they are just going along, they're making a lot of money, everybody knows how successful they are, and then they had an HR snafu and their business was sideways super, super quickly. So invest in that. If you do that well on the front end, your odds of continuing the growth and success of your company are so much greater.
Or with social media as it is, not go sideways, go south.
Completely go south. Yes.
Fast and hard.
Yes,
Lot
fast
of,
and hard. Just
brand,
because
yeah.
they didn't want to invest in it, they didn't care about it, they thought it was fine, or they didn't reach out to an expert outside resource because you need some help from other people other than just yourself.
A lot of brand equity or decades of positive things in the marketplace go away real quick in the world we're in.
Yeah.
All right, last two guys.
Yeah, so I would actually like to add to that. So mine was, the vision, the technology planning processes, that is kind of a given, right? So from a sales and marketing perspective, I think the one thing that I would, especially if you're in brick and mortar business, but even if you're in a service type business, make sure your online reputation is something that you take really seriously and have a process for that. So even if you're a big service type business, Glassdoor could really damage your business really seriously. So whether you're selling a product or a service, and there's a way for someone to give you a review, a good one or a bad one online, make sure you have a process in place to make sure you're getting all the good ones and you're addressing the bad ones. Because that can really undo a lot of the good work that you do. So it's kind of connected also to, what happens on social media. If you're not engaging with your audience, that's kind of where this whole online reputation thing can start to unravel pretty quick. But on the positive side, again, I would, so the philosophy that we use from a sales and marketing perspective, again, is your audience, and the better you know your audience, the more successful you'll be. But they have questions, you have answers, and you need to put them out there. They need to be on your website, on your social channels, on your YouTube channel, anywhere that someone is doing research about the services or products that you provide. You want to be answering their questions.
Great, thank you. Micah.
Take care of the employees. You get so focused on all these other things that are going on with the company, especially when you're in the leadership. You're focused on numbers, you're focused on growth and sales, marketing, finances. It's really easy to forget about the people that actually make the thing work. And having that high level of trust, having a venue, a regular meeting where there's this great dialogue about what's going on with people that are actually working inside of the company. I can't remember when I heard this, but it really it stuck with me. It was from a speaker at an event at one point in time. And he closed with, there's somebody in your company right now who has something going on in their life that you can have a positive impact on. It might be they've got a medical bill that's in collections and they're getting 3-4 phone calls a night and they're worried about being able to make rent. And that could be $1,000, right? It could be something to your multi-million-dollar business that's nothing. And you could even just make it an interest-free loan, but it would make them exponentially happier and they'd be able to come to work and be much more productive. So you can justify it in a purely data-driven way, logic alone. I should make sure this person's happy so they can produce more widgets. But then on a personal level, you can do something for another human being that can really be impactful in their life. So that'd be my advice, is just try and stay in tune with how everybody's doing. And if you can create an environment where you're able to help people, they'll be able to help you back.
Okay, before everybody goes, I've got 3 books, and while she's picking those 3 out, let's see, Upsize Magazine and Club E is doing an M&A panel on March 22nd. Before then, if anybody's interested, the next Club E thing is February 1st back here, talking about the gig economy. And I know, myself included, a bunch of people in the audience having multiple revenue streams and businesses that they're working on. That's February 1st, the gig economy, and March 22nd, M&A. And do we have our 3 names?
Oh, I will pick that right now.
And again, the book was No Man's Land, Where Growing Companies Fail by Doug Tatum. Oh,
Or should I? All right. This one. Oh, other side. Matt Botchinek.
all right, Matt.
Help me with your name. Addis? Okay.
Pronounce it for us.
Is it Addis Octus? Okay.
All right.
From Highland Bank, Rick Wall.
He bugged out, so Melissa can take care of him. All right, wait, scratch that from the video.
right.
That was Melissa Johnston who won that book.
Yay, Melissa. And Mark Klingensheim. How am I doing?
Thanks, Simon.
Oh, okay.
All right.
From SEMA Partners.
Okay, so I have books for everybody. Thank you for coming, and let's thank our panel.